So for some reason with my video, it did not record, and I've done it 3 times now, and I just can't bring myself to read part 2 or chapter 2 face to face again. So I'm just going to give you a brief overview. So in the beginning, he talks about how he got really bad acne and how he punished himself, like self-harm, by picking his face until he bled, and he felt this was like a punishment that he deserved. So he just kept doing it over and over and over again until he hurt himself and he just looked like he had been beaten up. Then he decided that he might try to escape to Canada, but he realized that was probably not a really good option. And then he realizes that he's still being followed or spied on. So he tries like every day while he's still staying at the Chelsea Hotel to just like escape the agents. But they always seem to catch up with him and follow him. And it gets to the point where he actually decides that he would rather die. And he's like, just please let me die. And they just won't leave him alone. So every time this would happen, he'd get followed, he'd go back to the hotel room and he would like work his face over until he would bleed and he'd be in pain. But then it kind of became a game for a short while. This is all while he's awaiting his sentencing to kind of see if he could avoid the agents. So that became part of the game. But the other part was that he was really applying to these colleges, and all they needed was a writing sample, but he kept saying, like, I'm a fraud, I can't do this, I don't have a good writing sample, and he never really believed in himself. So this was part of his kind of hold up of getting accepted into the colleges he wanted to go to. So he said he spent so much of his money that he still had on drinking and eating and just trying to like buy as many books about the experience he's going to be in. But again, he's reading fictional books, not nonfiction. He even read books about being a POW and being in Nazi concentration camps. Also that he could understand the pain that they may experience and he could maybe relate to it. But most of all, he talked about the surviving it and what they learned after they kind of got through that experience, and he realized that that may be him. So that's kind of his hold on for hope. Then he actually goes to meet Lucas, the guy, one of the guys that he sold to, and he ends up at his apartment, and he wanted to go there because he just thought, oh, he'd be interesting to talk to, but Lucas was actually still detained, and he decides to talk to his wife. And what his wife said, which was really powerful, was, I'm going to let Lucas stay there because he has a problem, but did you ever think about, the line says, you like to sell it, but did you ever consider what it would do to the people who bought it? And really those words hit home for him because I don't think he ever did. He only ever thought about himself, and he felt dumb, like he just didn't know what to say. So he left feeling kind of injured on the inside because he knew that he had done harm to other people, but he had never realized that. So then he called his lawyer and he talked to him and he said, Lucas is doing time, what about me? And the lawyer's like, don't worry about it, you're not a 2-time offender and you're younger, so don't worry about it. But Jack really knows that he's probably going to do time. Then he decides to go look for the boat and it's gone, and it's really like sealed everything in emotionally for Jack, and he finally started crying and he just felt defeated and he felt like he had nothing to say. And he said, the line says, I was just waiting for the one day to arrive when my entire life would pivot, and I was sure things were not going to go pivot my way. So he really doesn't have a lot of hope in how things are going to turn out in terms of sentencing. Waiting was kind of killing him on the inside. And then one day he actually turned on the news and watched how there was a real life prison uprising, because in this New York State penitentiary where he may go, the prisoners were complaining about the conditions and how they were being treated like animals and how horrifying it was. And then the governor actually sent in a bunch of troops and called them all naked into the yard and shot them all down with like 10,000 rounds in whatever, what did it say? It said 4,000 shots were fired in 10 minutes, which is insane. That's just brutality. They even shot some of the guards, and it really showed. And then they were showing them, these men, nude on the news, so really dehumanizing them. And this really got to Jack, and he went in and just tortured himself by picking at his face until he bled. So his fears are growing more and more. He's becoming more anxious, and he just keeps taking on his face as a way to punish himself. But what he decides to do is actually take the remaining hash and bury it in Central Park. And he remembered it by the steps of numbers that were important to him from books that were important to him and his age, and he buried it there so that he can potentially go back there after he gets out and recover the hash and then sell it, so he has like insured money for when he gets out, because he has no idea how long he's going to be there. He said it took a really long time and it was a really hard work, but he just said like, okay, this is something I feel like I need to do. Then the next morning he knew that it was sentencing day, so he got in the shower, then he hurt himself one more time, and then he packed his bags up and he left it in the front desk, and he said, either I'm gonna be here to get my stuff later or somebody else was, and the receptionist was just kind of like, yeah, whatever. So he had made no impression on anybody, and I think that really got to Jack.